Okay, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to add seam allowance to your finished or amended ePattern. So as you can see, I've simply created some new seams and then merged the bottom two panel pieces, so we have a much neater, cleaner block with this really interesting, let's say, scalloping detail. As I said, you can pretty much do any customization or amendment you like based on our tutorials. This is not to show you this customization, but simply to show you how to add the seam allowance. It's a very simple process, it's quite powerful, and once you get the technique down, it should be very easy to do this for all your blocks going forward. The next tutorial after this will be showing you how to then print off your full-size ePattern so you can actually start to cut it in material and start toiling your customized basic block. So first of all, to start creating our seam allowance, we're going to choose how much we need. So first of all, let's just go to View, and then let's go to Rulers. Let's show the rulers so we can see them. Here we go. I'm working in centimeters. You can obviously work in inches if you prefer. The way to do that is simply to right-click, and you see inches, centimeters. You can change it here simply by right-clicking on that menu bar or on this ruler bar. So first of all, I'm going to go to my line tool just here. I'm going to make sure I have a line color selected, which is black. Click OK. I'm then going to click and drag, and then I'm going to hold down Shift. If I hold down Shift, it locks it to the horizontal, diagonal, or vertical. So let's just go horizontal along. Let's draw one line, and just let go, release, and your line will be drawn. There you go. Next, we're simply going to use our big selection tool. We're going to click on this line or drag over it to select it. We're then going to hit the Enter key on our keyboard, and here we have the Move dialog box. We have horizontal and we have vertical. I want to move this line parallel down from its existing line by, let's say, 1 centimeter. So this is where you can add your custom seam allowance. So I'm working with 1 centimeter. You can type in 1.5 if you prefer. Or if you're working in inches, you can have 2.5 or possibly 1.25. As I said, you can switch between inches and centimeters here. I'm going to stick with a custom seam allowance of 1. So let's just click Copy. Okay, you can even preview it as well to see where that line actually falls. Let's just press Copy. So we now have two lines. This is essentially our seam allowance, the distance between the pattern line and the cut line, and I'll explain that in a minute when we finish this. Also, we want to have 3 lines rather than 2. The reason why is because, well, I'll show you in a minute. Let me just simply create this. So let's once again, using the big selection tool, just select this line and hit Control D. Control D simply duplicates your existing movement. Similarly, if you want to do it manually, click on this line, hit the Enter key, and click Tab down, 1 centimeter vertical, and you can preview it once again. So we have 3 lines, 1 centimeter apart. Let's just copy. Okay, and this is going to be your seam allowance. I'm just going to change the fill of this to be, let's say, red, and then, sorry, the line color to be red, and the bottom one to be blue. Okay, we're now going to drag this into a brush, which we can then apply that brush to the entirety of our pattern. So if you're not familiar with brushes, this is the little tab up here, see brushes. If you can't find it, simply go to Window and then scroll down, and you should find brushes, and that will make it appear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select using my big selection tool. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to then click on the line and then drag it into this little white box, and that will create a brush. We're going to call it Art Brush. Okay, there are different various brushes you can use, but for this we're going to use Art Brush. Click OK, and as you can see, we can even name this. So we can put this as 1 cm seam allowance. Okay, you can save this and apply different ones as you wish. Don't worry about stretch to fit stroke length. Let's just leave all this. Also the direction. As long as it's going with the line, the direction is going with the line, that's fine. This is wrong, whereas this is correct, and this is correct. Okay, and next we're simply just going to click OK. So we can now remove our 1 cm seam allowance brush, and as you can see, we have it saved here. Next thing I'm going to do is simply use my small selection tool. I'm going to, let's say, select this one block here. It doesn't matter, just click on it, or you can drag over it. And I'm then going to click on my brush. And as you can see, it basically creates this brush along the lines of your block. And we know that this is 1 centimeter, and we know that this is 1 centimeter. The reason why we've created 3 lines is because a brush always falls along or when you apply a brush, it always falls along the middle of your artwork. So for example, let's just create a brush with 2 lines. One, let's copy, and let's make this red. And then let's copy this in to my brush. OK, click OK. Let's just get rid of this. As you can see, it's in here. If I go to this block and I click on that brush, if you can see, it uses the center of that brush artwork to apply to the actual block itself. So this wouldn't be 1 centimeter, this would be 0.5 centimeters. And we also lose, let's say, the actual line of our block, or the actual outline of our block. Okay, so this is wrong. This is why we use 3 lines, because then it uses the middle line for our actual block. I hope that makes sense. I can maybe cover this if you have some more issues, or go in more depth. But in the meantime, I'm simply going to click on my block and use my 1 cm 3-line seam allowance. And do this to all of them. There we go. Click OK. And so now you can see we have our block, which is here, and then we have our external seam allowance. At the moment, this is not actually editable because it is still a brush. It's simply an artwork. So the way that you actually edit this is simply by going up to Object in your menu and then going Expand Appearance, and that will allow you to edit that line. You see? So what we want to do is we want to simply remove the inner stroke. You see? You can do the same with this one. Object, Expand Appearance. Let's go to the other two. Object, Expand Appearance, and then going to delete the inside line because this isn't actually anything at all. Okay, this is what's most important. It's the black line, and then we have this outside line. Okay, so there we have it. Next, we need to clean this up a little bit, because you can see it's a little bit messy here. Some lines don't match, and so it's a little bit rough around the edges. So the easiest way to do this, I'm going to click on my red line, or my outside line. We can actually make this black now. I just created the color just so you could simply differentiate between the lines, and it might be a good idea for you to do that. So we can either change the line color here by double clicking. I can either double click on this line art, or I can simply, using my eyedropper tool or eyedrop tool, I can just simply click on an attribute of another line and it will create that attribute here. If you're not sure what I just did, we have a tutorial that shows you the basics of Illustrator or pattern cutting in Illustrator, which will give you some tips and tricks and give you a little bit of understanding of how you actually use some of these tools in Illustrator. So let's just move that to one side. So to clean this up, I'm simply going to, let's do it one by one. I'm going to click on this outside line because this is the messy one. I'm then going to go to Pathfinder. As I said, if you haven't got this, click on Window and then scroll down, Pathfinder, and it should appear here. So I'm going to click on this line. I'm then going to select the Unite mode, and this will see, it basically closes that loop or closes that shape. Okay, and just to give it a little bit more, to make it a little bit cleaner, I'm simply just going to move this line down. You see? The way that I did that is very simple. I'm going to use my small selection tool. I'm going to find that point, click on the anchor. I'm going to click and drag. You see, you can click and drag and move it around. But I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And what that does is, it locks it to vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. And so that will make it easier when pulling that point vertically straight down. Okay, it'll keep it in line. Here as well, it might be a nice idea not to have that little ledge. So simply I'm going to follow the line up from the point through the dart until I meet that outside edge. I'm then going to simply add a point. To do this, you can simply go to your anchor point, click and hold, and then you have your Add Anchor Point tool. And this will simply add one of these little anchors wherever you click. So let's follow that line up, and then let's click there. I'm then going to go to Delete Anchor Point tool, and I'm going to delete that one, and that gives us a nice transition. Okay, makes it much cleaner. Also, small selection tool, if you find you have this, simply click and drag to where the point feels like it should be. There we go. Also, you can use your arrow keys, so you can move that point left using the arrow key, or left using the left arrow key, or right using the right arrow key, up and down, just to get that in the right position. You can also remove points if you feel that they're redundant. Okay, so this is just simply cleaning and refining this seam allowance. So that pattern piece is pretty much completed now. It looks lovely, really nice. Let's just give this a slightly larger line color, line thickness, just so we know that is the outside of our block. That's where we're going to be cutting, and this is where we're going to be sewing. Let's move on to the next piece. I'm going to get that line attribute, eyedropper tool, select, and we're just going to go to Pathfinder, and then Unite, and then once again here we're going to add a point. There we go. And I'm just going to small selection tool, I'm going to move that up. To be fair, this one probably doesn't need to be added because it would just be silly having a point that would extend, let's say, this far up. I would probably leave it as a straight line, but it's completely up to you. As long as you follow this when you're sewing, you shouldn't have a problem. Okay, this one's pretty much complete. Let's move on to our next one. Once again, let's use our eyedropper tool. Let's select that line thickness, and then let's just go Unite. Perfect. We have our next one, and this one, as you can see, okay, it might need a little bit of changing here, so let's just simply click on that line, small selection tool, click, use our eyedropper tool, get that line weight, and then let's just simply go Unite. Okay, this one probably could do with a point, so let's simply add point or add anchor. Let's just go back. So let's click the add, and let's go to our small selection tool, click off, click, and then move that to a position where it feels more comfortable. You can obviously move it around with your arrow keys. Perfect. Almost there. There we go. You can play this all day. Okay, so now we have the finished seam allowance for our block. Okay, really simple. Also, as you can see, this is falling slightly off the artboard here, so if you hit Control, Alt and P, you'll bring up the document setup. You can also do this by going into File, and then Document Setup. Click Edit Artboard, and then you can create a bit more area here, for example, just by clicking and dragging. Gives you a little bit more space to work with. Perfect. Okay, let's also just save our pattern. So let's go File, Save As. Let's place it on the desktop, and let's call it Chevron. First of all, let's call it by the actual the person that it's for. So let's say Susie Blue. Oops. And then we have Chevron Seams. Perfect. And let's just click Save. Wonderful. Okay, so the next tutorial I'm going to show you how to then place this on a PDF printout page so you can actually print it from your home printer and then start creating.